Hey guys, what are we talking about today? How do you know we're talking about absolute value equations? Besides the fact that it's on the board, you've already written it down, haven't you? Okay, in your lesson plan section? Okay, you already know what the homework is for tonight, which is the workbook, page 21. Let me show you a little bit about that so I can make sure we're not going to be confused about this. Here's page 21. Oh, look. Only number 1 is on page 21. See, look. Here's the page number. How do I find the rest? Yes! You guys are finally getting this. Okay? The rest has 2 through 7. Well, actually, it has 2 through 9, but I only ask you to do through 7. Okay? Which brings up a point that I was asked earlier. What if we do 8 and 9?
That's okay.
That's okay. And you'll get extra credit for it. Okay? If like tonight, let me get there again. Here's your work. Zoom out. This is the page you're supposed to do. Well, besides number 1 on the previous page, right? I only assigned 1 through 7. If you go ahead and do the 2 that are not assigned but are still on this page, you do get extra credit for that. Okay? Got it? Yes. Now, this assignment, this lesson is really nice for students because you don't have to wonder if you're right or wrong. You will know every time. Okay? You'll know every time. So what I want you to tell me first is, what does this mean? It means absolute value of x, right? What does absolute value mean? How far it is from 0. How far it is from 0. Okay? So, will we ever have negative? So that's a tricky question for the record. Okay? I'm going to step away from the recording for a second to ask you a question. Will I ever have a negative distance? Can I ever have a negative distance? Ever?
No. Yes.
Would you get up for just a second? If I'm measuring how far the ground is from my feet, if my feet is 0, isn't it below my feet?
Yes.
The ground is below my feet, so if I'm measuring that distance, it may turn out to be a negative number, right?
Yes.
Stepped on your paper, I'm sorry. That's okay. What if I'm standing here measuring from here forward? Where's the wall behind me?
Negative.
Isn't that going to be a negative distance?
Yes.
Okay, so we have to be careful when we say, is there such things as negative distance? Because sometimes this year we're going to do some word problems and we're going to get negatives for our answer, and it's not going to be wrong based on the problem situation. Okay? If ground level is 0, here's the ground. Here's a guy throwing a rock off a cliff. After he looks to see if there's anybody below him, how far is the rock going to hit the water? Isn't this distance going to turn out to be a negative number if this is 0? It is, right? Okay? So we have to be careful when we say we can never have a negative distance because it really depends on the problem situation. But if we're talking about absolute value, and we're talking about a distance from 0, are we getting a negative value? No, we aren't. Okay? We're not going to get a negative value. So when we say absolute value like this, absolute value of x, there's 2 possibilities that this x is allowed to be. What are they? It could be x. It could also be negative x, right? Whatever's inside the absolute value can be a positive value or a negative value. All right? So let's start off by solving a very, very simple absolute value equation. Let's solve absolute value of x equals 5. Okay? So the first step that we always are going to do is isolate the absolute value. That means, is the absolute value all by itself on one side of the equal sign? Yeah, so I don't have to do anything for that this time, right? So now I have to say, this is allowed to be positive and it's allowed to be negative. So I'm going to rewrite this absolute value problem into two separate problems, making one of them positive and one of them negative. Whatever's inside the absolute value, one time is positive, one time is negative. Okay? Well, look, guys, this is already solved, isn't it? What about this one? Is it solved for x? Is x all by itself? Okay, so how do I get x by itself? I can either multiply by -1 or I can divide by -1. It doesn't make any difference. You're going to get the same outcome either way. X equals -5. So will I always get two answers?
Yes.
So you think maybe yes, right? That's our conclusion right now. And we'll see here in just a little while after we do some more examples. Fair enough? Okay. So, is this right? Are these two answers right? How could we know for sure? Substitute them in, right? Take this answer and plug it in. What's the absolute value of 5? Does 5 equal 5? Then this is a correct answer. Is this one correct? What is the absolute value of -5? 5. Does 5 equal 5? Then this is also a correct answer.
So if it's with a negative, like inside the absolute value, it's positive?
Well, yes. When we take the absolute value of a negative number, it is a positive 5. Okay? All right, so let's make them a little bit more difficult and see how we do. What about this? X plus 4, absolute value of x plus 4 equals 6. So first of all, is the absolute value isolated? Is it by itself on one side of the equal sign? Yes, it is, right? The absolute value is by itself. Now, we're not talking about what's inside the absolute value. I'm saying, is the absolute value isolated? Yes, it is, okay? Now that the absolute value is isolated, we need one value that's positive and one value that's negative. So we're going to write, here's the positive value, whatever was just there, and then here is the negative value. I took whatever was inside and made it negative. Does that make sense? And then accidentally miswrote the problem, so make sure you fix that. Sorry about that. Sorry. Sorry.
You can't make mistakes.
But if I can never make mistakes, how in the world can you pass this class? See what I'm saying? I am a human, so are you. I make mistakes, so can you. Okay? Alright, how do I solve this one? How do I solve for x? Good. Subtract 4 from both sides. X equals 2. I think part of the reason you're not answering me is because you're like, wait, that's like 7th grade math. It is. It is. Once we know what to do with absolute value, it becomes a really simple 7th, 8th grade math problem, something like that, right? And that's okay. Okay, what do we do here? So we actually have two options, just so you know. Okay, that's one option. We can multiply both sides by a -1. Okay, or divide both sides by a -1. That's probably a little easier for some people to see. Okay, I'm going to show you both options just because I want you to be able to choose which way makes more sense to you. Because both of them are correct. Okay, I'm doing this option first because that's what she said. Fair enough? So what happens on the left-hand side if I have a negative divided by a negative? Both of those signs go to positive, and we just have x plus 4, right? What happens right here? -6. Then guess what we do? Subtract 4 from both sides. What's -6 minus 4? -10. So let me show the other way that we could do. Okay? What we had here was negative times x plus 4 equals a 6, right? I could think about this being a -1, couldn't I? And I could distribute that to each term inside the parentheses, which would give me -x minus 4 equals 6. I could add 4 to both sides, which would give me -x equals 10. And then I could divide both sides by -1 and get x equals -10. Look at the answers. Look at the answers. They're the same. I got the same answer doing it two different ways. That's okay. I don't know if you're more comfortable dividing the negative way first or if you're more comfortable distributing the negative first. You're going to get the same answer both ways. Okay? But these are so 2 and negative 10 are the answers I got to solve this equation, right?
Yes.
Are they right?
Yes.
Let's prove it. 2 plus 4.
6.
Excellent. 6. What's the absolute value of 6?
6.
Does 6 equal 6?
Yes.
Yes. Negative 10. Negative 10 plus 4. Negative 6. What's the absolute value of negative 6? Does 6 equal 6? Then my answers for sure are 2 and negative 10. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. You know what I have to do though, right? I have to make it a little harder, right? You ready?
Yes.
Actually, don't freak out. So let's see fraction.
Is the absolute value isolated?
No.
Not this time, right? What do I have to do?
Divide by 2.
Can I distribute it here? We can't. We cannot. Because we cannot distribute inside an absolute value. We have to isolate that absolute value. So what if this problem was just this? Would I know how to solve it then?
Yes.
What would I do? I divide both sides by 2, right? Guess what I do here? Divide both sides by 2. What happens on the left-hand side?
1/2.
The 2 simplify to 1, and I'm just left with absolute value of x minus 3. What happens on the right-hand side? 6. Now, I have been remiss in showing you something that your homework requires you to do. I'll make sure to show it to you on this one. I'm not worried about it, though, which is why I haven't done it so far. Fair enough? Okay, so what do I do now? 1 positive, 1 negative, right? Since the absolute value is isolated, I have x minus 3 equals 6, and I have a negative x minus 3 equals 6. So on this left-hand side, I can add 3 to both sides and get x equals 9. And what about this one? What do you want to do? Divide, okay, divide by negative 1. X minus 3 equals negative 6. When I add 3 to both sides, x equals negative 3. So here's what your homework also asks you to do. It asks you to graph the equation, graph the answers on a number line. So before we graph them, though, we do want to make sure they're correct, right? So 9. 9 minus 3. 6. Absolute value of 6?
6.
Does 6 equal 6?
Yes.
Okay. Negative 3 minus 3. Negative 6. Absolute value of negative 6?
6.
Does 6 equal 6? Okay, so I know these are right. Now I have to put them on a number line. Well, there's negative 3, there's 0, there's 9. How do I put 9 on a number line? Dot. Is it colored in or open? Are you sure it's colored in?
Yes.
Besides the fact that I just colored it in?
Exactly 9.
It's exactly 9, right? 9 is the answer. It's not before or after. It's not including 9. It is 9.
Is this because we're using absolute?
What is what? Because we're using absolute.
Closing of the
Nope. The answer is 9. It's okay. We'll get there. How are you feeling about this? I have 2 more problems I have to show you. Okay? Let's do 2x plus 4 plus 3 equals 3. Is the absolute value isolated?
No.
So what do we have to do to isolate it? Subtract 3 from both sides. 2x plus 4 equals 0, okay? Is the absolute value isolated?
Yes.
So now what? 1 positive, 1 negative, right? Two equations. 2x plus 4 equals 0, and negative 2x plus 4 equals 0. So to solve the left-hand side, subtract 4, 2x equals negative 4, and then divide by 2, so x equals negative 2. What do I do up here? Divide by negative 1, okay? So 2x plus 4 equals 0. So why are you woeing me as if I was a horse? Wait a second. I thought I was supposed to get 2 answers every time.
So this time you don't need 2 answers.
Why don't I need 2 answers?
Because 0.
Because it equals 0, right? How many different things can be inside here that when I take the absolute value of it equals 0? What, a positive 0 and a negative 0? Is there such things? No, we just have a 0. That's the only time though, right? Okay. Do I need to graph this for you in a number line, or you got that? You got that? Okay.
So it would be just going on.
All right, one more. You ready?
Yes.
One more. This is just for you, Cameron. Is the absolute value isolated?
Yes.
Yes. So what do we do first? Not this time.
Oh, this isn't fractions.
It doesn't have anything to do with the fraction. I put that in for Cameron. Just to freak her out, because she said she only freaks out when she sees fractions. Not this time. We don't have to. I mean, I could write it down for you, the positive and the negative. We could go through all the steps, and when we put it back in, it would be wrong. Guys, this is a thinking problem. You tell me right now what number would be inside of here that I take the absolute value of it and I get a negative 6.
Nothing.
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 Because you don't have negative.
No pollution.
That's a solution.
Oh,
No pollution.
So why didn't I put that on my work
Absolutely.
from now on?
Yes. Ma'am.
Why would, how could you not,
Tell me what number would have to be in here that I could take the absolute value of it and get a negative answer. Every single time we've done all of these other examples, when we put this in with negative 10 plus 4 was negative 6. What's the absolute value of negative 6? 6. Does 6 equal 6? Yes, so we knew that was right. Even when we put this one in, 2 plus 4 is 6. Absolute value of 6 is 6. It's always a positive value when I take an absolute value of something.
so we're not dealing
So
with
now I'm telling you, what number can I take the absolute value of that will give me an answer that is negative 6? There is none.
No solution.
Like I said, I can do 5x plus 1/3 equals negative 6, and negative 5x plus 1/3 equals negative 6, and I could do all the math associated with it, but when I put it back in, I would get a negative 6 in here, but when I take the absolute value of negative 6, what do I get? Positive 6. Will positive 6 ever equal negative 6? No. Okay? Any questions about that? So someone earlier said to me, okay, then so we can never get a negative answer, right?
Wrong.
Didn't we get a negative 10 right here?
Yeah.
Didn't we get a negative 3 right here?
Yeah.
And a negative 2 right here? And weren't those answers correct?
Yes.
So what part cannot be negative?
Oh,
The answer, right? On the other side of the equal sign. If you ever get to the point where on the other side of the equal sign, when you already have your absolute value isolated, this is a negative, you can just write no solution. Now, don't get fooled, though. Don't get fooled, because sometimes they'll try to fool you on purpose, and they'll say something like 2x plus 5 minus 7 equals negative 3.
Oh, because you have the minus 7.
Yeah, we have the minus 7, so when I added 7 to both sides, look, this is going to be a 4. It's going to be a positive number on that side, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Isolate the absolute value, and then when the absolute value is isolated, make some decisions. Okay? Do you have any questions about this? I'd like to give you the rest of the period to work on your homework. Can I do that?
Yes.
Okay, if you have any questions, make sure you ask.
Okay.